ZombieTech. Welcome to ZombieTech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Eddie.
He's Whisker.
And who do we have this week?
This week we have Eric Stein, otherwise known as Toba, and otherwise known as Time Lord of Pumping Station 1.
I'm the Time Lord, huh? I thought I was just CTO, but I guess Time Lord is definitely cooler.
Yeah. Well, because you're working on a time machine.
It's true, I am.
But you have to explain that. I mean, because every single time I ask you about your time machine, it is like, I'm still confused. So.
Oh. Well, I guess time travel is sort of confusing, so I can understand the issue. When I first came up with this idea, I thought, well, I want a time machine, and how am I supposed to do that? Because that's a very complex question. What is a time machine? And really, we're all time machines, moving forward at 1 second per second. But that's the silly joke that people think that I'm talking about when I say I built a time machine. But I actually did build a time machine, and what it does is it lets you walk up to this thing that looks very strange. It's got it's built out of the industrial control panel for running a laser that did ultrasonic transduced levitation sintering. I did not do that. That was a company that went under because evidently there's not quite enough money in ultrasonic levitated laser sintering as you would think there is, and they did not survive. So their parts became food for the hackerspace.
Defunct, sure.
So we had this interesting console thing. It's got all these big buttons on them, some of them with big metal guards around so you don't accidentally sinter yourself. So I thought, man, I really have to turn this into a time machine because it had been just put in front of the TARDIS that Pumping Station 1 has. Mm-hmm. It was just standing there in front. I was like, well, there's a control panel, and there's the TARDIS, which looks like a time machine. I have to turn the control panel into a time machine that actually works.
Right.
Because people are going to get confused, and they're going to try to use it to use the TARDIS, and if it doesn't do anything, then that's going to really be sad for them, so I had to fix it. So what I have it doing is I've got a computer inside a box that is sitting on the end of a Steadicam arm, which looks very weird. I don't know if you've seen a picture. And what I have it do is you walk up and you push the record button, which says HV on for high voltage. People don't quite get. There's a lot of high voltage involved in this place, so you have to use the high voltage button.
Sure.
It doesn't actually use any high voltage anymore, of course, just low voltage. But it turns on the time circuit, aka the VLC process that records the video off of the webcam that's in the laptop that's hiding inside a wooden box on a Steadicam arm. So at this point, they see a little white light, and they look at it, and they think, well, wow, what can I do with this? And they take the box, and they move it around, because it's a Steadicam arm. You can shoot like video, whatever you want. They can tilt it around, look at various parts of the hackerspace, and when you're done recording, you turn this knob that goes in 20/3 of a day. There were 23 lines. I didn't want to reline the thing on the knob, so I just made it be 20/3 of a day because hours are not very good anyway. So you turn that to how far into the future you want to send your message, and then you press the stop recording video.
Weird.
And then nothing happens because, well, it went into the future.
Right.
But on the flip side, suppose you're 23 hours later, you're walking into the hackerspace. No one else is there.
Right.
You turn on the light. Now, this is a sort of complex situation because now we're talking about this laptop sitting on the end of an arm, and it's got an Ethernet cable and a power cable and an audio cable going up to it. And that Ethernet cable goes into the switches and goes to the network, goes to the walls, goes to the ceiling, goes to the other room where I got a server rack. Yeah. And that server rack is continually video processing for cameras that are throughout the space. So it processes using OpenCV. I don't know if any of you have used that out there on the internet, but it's this great package for doing video processing. So you can do all sorts of stuff like edge detection, blurs, transforms, stuff like that. So if you want to write something that processes, understands, acts on video information, it's perfect. So what I have it doing is that it constantly knows whether there's anyone in all the rooms and how busy they are. That's something I built last year. So what I have that doing is I have an API on it. So there's a continual flow of updates of how busy the room is over to the TARDIS. So the actual TARDIS, as I call it, is sitting there waiting, just abiding, as the dude would say. And it just sits there and it waits for the right moment to deliver your message that you sent into the future. So there's two components here. One, there's a video. Well, it's actually going to be three. I'll come in again. Two, it's enough time has passed because you turn that knob to the future.
Right.
And if it's not the future yet, then no, the video does not come out of the time machine.
Right.
And three, is anyone in the room? Because if there's no one there, it's not cool to deliver video.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you walk into the room and turn on the light, and then the video camera that has been taking snapshots of darkness for however long, just been sitting there in a dark room waiting for you. Sort of creepy, I guess. It detects you. That information goes into the server rack that's been churning away using 2 cores continually since a long time, and sends the packet. It hits the laptop, the little state machine that's detecting whether the conditions are right, whether the time has come for the prophecy to be made so. And it has all the booleans and true, and everything's great. And what it does, it doesn't just play the video because that's not dramatic enough. Just playing the video is lame because it's a video. It's not actually going to be, the video is not going to be that cool because the person who recorded it, e.g. me, or people who thought pushing a button on this thing was like, usually the video doesn't end up being that interesting.
Sure.
But the delivery is the cool part. You come in and you see a light, it's like a big bulb under a switch in the panel. The panel just looks cool as it is. It lights up, bright red. And then that sound that the TARDIS makes. I don't know if I can do the sound correctly. It does that. And it starts making the weird noises. And you're like, wow, what is that? But there's a light lit up on a panel. And we all know that it's like the Pandora's box problem. Right. There's an interesting thing that happens, and a light lit up in a button. We're only human. You're going to push because
you have to.
Even if it blows you up, you're going to push the button because that risk is worth taking. This is curiosity not being satisfied. So you push the button, and some video from who knows how long ago plays back. It doesn't say how long ago, so you have like this puzzle to do.
Huh.
And you think, what is that? Where does that come from? And sometimes it's sort of buggy, which is sort of cool. Like sometimes it just decides to play because the switch like doesn't debounce or something, and it just you walking nearby made the switch go.
Oh,
it plays back without your input.
that's
Sometimes
creepy too, though.
it is sort of creepy and awesome. Sometimes there's no audio because it got lost in time, I guess. So I need to work out a few issues. But the next thing I'm working on that is tying it into all my member presence type stuff that detects whether people have signed onto the network, whether they've scheduled themselves to be at the space via our IRC bots, and have it talk to those bots so you can say, hey, I want to deliver a message tomorrow, but only if Steve's there. I don't want other people. So it's going to be
Thanks galore.
Yeah.
That sounds very cool. Have there been any like, and I had to say, I think those are features, not bugs.
Oh yeah, that's why I've sort of like not really focused on fixing them.
Yeah.
Because they make the thing sort of cool and interesting.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you have a bug and you're like, bug, you're all right.
And have you ever had any people get totally freaked out?
I've had someone jump up, start clapping their hands and screaming before.
I'll take that. That's an acceptable response.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. Very cool. So you came up with that entire system, or like did you do the software for the system? Because you're mostly a software guy from your website.
Yeah, I'm mostly a software guy, but hackerspaces are a hell of a drug. And they make you do stuff that you're bad at and not give up. Because the people you're around aren't going to be jerks about it.
Right.
And I did have help with the electronics. But most of it was, I need this, and I'm working on it, and I already know what it's going to be. Like my friend Steve, I guess he's the example of the guy who I would deliver the message to. Mm-hmm. He built the relay board that's inside there that allows me to turn on the 120-volt lights. I probably would have figured it out, but he did it. We collaborated on it. He's found a bunch of the components. So there's been a couple of people who have been giving input, but I've done most of the work on it.
Very cool. Very cool. So for those who don't know, because we kind of jumped right in.
We did.
Eric is CTO, or I think Time Lord is more.
Time Lord's pretty good.
Time Lord. Okay. Time Lord of Pumping Station 1. And that is a hackerspace in Chicago. Actually, I think the largest, if not the only.
Only.
The
for
only.
now.
Okay.
There's a couple hackerspaces starting up in the area.
Okay.
One of them is Southside Hackerspace. We're going to get some neighbors soon.
Cool.
But we're right now the only one that's in Chicago proper. There's also Workshop 88 in Glen Ellen.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a ways out, though.
Okay.
In Chicago proper, we're the only hackerspace right now, as far as we know.
Gotcha. So can you tell us a little bit about Pumping Station 1? Because we've actually seemed to bounce around a lot of the different hacker spaces from the different people we've talked to. And, well, you're the first from Pumping Station 1. And it's got a cool name.
Well, Pumping Station 1 is one of the best places in the world, in my opinion. Possibly the best. I'll just tell you about how I found it, because I'm not actually that versed on the history of it. So I was just minding my own business, moving to Chicago without very much of a plan in life, and getting a job. And then I thought, I heard there were these things called hackerspaces, and I live in a major city now, so I'm going to look them up and see what it's about, because I'd heard that they were awesome, and maybe this one will be. So I just showed up one Tuesday, and within about 2 hours, I was driving to Home Depot, or not Home, actually Home Depot was involved as well, but to Radio Shack, buying a bunch of relays, capacitors, and stuff, and wiring something up with a bunch of help from people to buzz people into my apartment using the internet. And
Nice.
a hackerspace, if you don't know, I mean, if you're listening to the show, you probably do, but is a place where you have a community and a workshop in one. You have all the tools that you need to execute any project you need. You have the wood shop, you have the electronics shop, you have the 3D printer, you have the laser cutter, you have all these computer components, you have all the art area, you have basically all of the tools that someone would have in a really well-equipped home shop and art room and everything else that you would accumulate over a decade or more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all pretty much in working order all the time. So you come in, and all this stuff is here. If you have an idea, you can execute it. But that's not the real value, in my opinion, because you can have something called a tech shop where you just pay, and then there's all these tools and you can use them.
Mm-hmm.
But what the real part is to me is a community of people, like-minded people who have ideas and they want to execute them, and they want to do stuff for themselves, for people. They want to build things, whether they're software, whether they're art, whether they're physical objects made of metal and wood and glass and whatever else. They want to take their ideas about how the world should be and turn it into reality.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just a little thing, creation is an amazing thing for making you feel good. And doing it matters a lot more when there's people who will look at it and be like, wow, what are you doing? Tell me about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rather than, oh man, I'm in a coffee shop trying to get people to notice that I'm doing something awesome. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Because they're too busy drinking their Starbucks coffee and looking at YouTube on their laptop for 3 hours.
Right.
So it's what coffee shops used to be in the 1700s or whatever. A place to go and talk to stuff, or talk to people. Well, talk to stuff too if you're nuts. It's a place to go where you'll have ideas and then you'll do them. And then there's going to be people there who appreciate it.
Right. Cool. So then, I know, well...
And, we mentioned this last week a little bit. I mean, what kind of situation would you rather be in if zombies are wandering the streets trying to bite your face off? Would you rather be the sort of person who is watching YouTube on a laptop in a Starbucks, or somebody who has like 100 friends who know how to do stuff?
Like make...
The one who has a zombie team prepared at all times.
Right.
And you know what the funny thing is? It's sort of appropriate, that project I was talking about, the time machine. The blog post I wrote about it on pumpkingstation1.org actually featured not zombie apocalypse, but a post-apocalyptic wasteland ruled by warlords, in which Pumping Station 1 still exists.
Of course.
And the TARDIS and the time machine figuratively help the rebels against the warlord overlords who have ruled Illinois and the Midwest for decades.
Now, explain how that would work.
Well, you'd have information. And one of the things is, all those bugs I was talking about, they're cool and all, but when you want to start using this to save the world in 80 years, you need it to be reliable.
True.
You can't have it flaking out and stuff like that. It needs to work correctly all the time. So in the future, when my time machine is fixed and all these things are solved, you'll be able to go beyond one day. You'll be able to say, I want to send this 70 years, please. I want to send this not only 70 years, but to the other side of the planet. Say I wanted to, say, Cork hackerspace in Ireland. I want to send them a message, and I want it to get there in 70 years. And I want that to exist. I'm working up an RFC for a protocol for messaging of that type, because you need to have reliable delivery in a distributed network where your message is not supposed to just get there quickly. It has to be stored for however long and then get there exactly when it should and be delivered.
I like that. That's fun.
Because the funny thing is, I actually am collaborating a little bit with Joe Kerman at Sector 67 in Wisconsin. And I don't know if you know him, but he's given me access to a machine up there that has a webcam. I haven't really started working with it yet, but that's going to be the first beachhead of the TARDIS protocol. Sort of like, I don't know if you watch Doctor Who at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was something called, I don't remember what it was called, but there was this group of people that could blow up the planet if they needed to. Sort of like that, except not bent on the destruction of humankind or whatever. I want to be able to take that and say, go further than just this room. Go elsewhere. Talk to someone in the future. And how you could use that to save the world is you say, all those ideas that people forget because history is forgotten. What if history could talk to you? What if history was not dead? What if history suddenly
popped up inconveniently from time to time?
Not necessarily inconveniently. All the extra filters, like who's there, where is it, stuff like that. Adding more conditionals can make it so the history pops up very conveniently, not inconveniently.
Like when they start seeing that something is starting to repeat itself, and they'll be like, okay, we've gone through this about 80 years in the past.
You know what you've just done? You've just given me an idea. And that idea is using Google News alerts to trigger these.
Do it.
Oh, man.
What's his name? David Suarez or Daniel Suarez wrote a book about something like that.
Damon,
yeah.
Damon.
He basically, a character in the book, dies, but he set up a computer system out on the internet to read the headlines and detect when he died, and then wreak vengeance on mankind and commit all the crimes that he wanted to when he was alive, but he couldn't.
I had a similar idea to that. It's more spooky and less vengeful. To do language analysis of chat logs, to make it so, what would Eric say in any given situation using a Markov chain or something like that? Not necessarily me, because I don't plan on dying. But have it so you can put this in someone's gravestone, so you can talk to their dead person. So it does a speech to text. Now. Put it into the Markov chain.
They have that
text
now.
To speech. What?
Yeah. No. I mean, I don't think you can put it in the tombstone, but they have these things where you can make an avatar of yourself, and you can answer like a whole bunch of questions in advance, and then when you die, like, your program can be sent to somebody else, like a family member or whatever, and the family member can talk to your avatar, like on the computer, and
shivers.
I know, isn't that creepy? And like, you'll respond as if, your avatar will respond as if you had responded, because you kind of sort of did.
You recorded it.
Yeah.
Like recordings.
Yeah.
That's sort of amazing. And I guess this is I'm thinking more along the lines of, a person wouldn't necessarily have to use this. I could just run all the chat logs I had talking to them if they appeared into it, and then have it. I could create a simulacrum. Is that what you call that of them?
Simulacrum, yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked a little bit on doing something similar.
Interesting.
Faye, who occasionally logs into our tymkrs chat room, listens to everybody talking and treats those as acceptable pairs, conversational pairs.
Yeah.
So by listening to humans respond to one another, she slowly starts to mimic them, and Faye eventually becomes all of those people blended into one entity. So this is just like a single person, right?
So if you ended up having a Faye,
same technology, but it's
only one person.
Yeah, you're only paying attention to one person's responses and only remembering those as valid responses instead of everyone's responses.
That's a really cool project, though.
Yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad to help. Now I have.
It sounds like my work here is done as far as those things are concerned.
So I have a question, and
Mm-hmm.
you've mentioned a couple of things on it, like you've kind of tangented on it. Talking to folks in Sector 67 and other hacker spaces. I seem to remember you talking about a project where you were trying to get a whole bunch of hacker spaces connected.
Well, that was the idea of a hackerspace chat roulette, except without as many naked people.
Right. Yeah.
And it looks like the video chat part could tangentially arise from the TARDIS network. I think I'm going to do the same thing. I sort of neglected to mention that the video chat part can become part of the TARDIS network because I all have software that's cloned from my GitHub running on these machines that have audio, video, webcam. And adding in a feature could just as easily be, hey, I upgraded it. Now everyone can video chat with each other. So that is something that will naturally evolve from that once I've got that network built out.
Mm-hmm.
Which is continuing non-apace because it's one of those projects that you have and you forget you have until someone mentions it.
Sure.
And that actually tangentially relates to one of the projects I built that works and is done as far as I'm concerned. Call it GitHub Roulette.
Okay.
And you configure it to use your GitHub account. You run it in your local shell machine. You just run it, and it goes and looks in all your GitHub issues, all the ones that are open. And then you say, hey, I want 1, I want 2, I want 3, and it prints them out with a URL and the title. And sometimes you find yourself thinking, man, I want to work on a project, but what? And then you just sort of think about it for a long time, and you don't start anything. I'm sure we've all been there.
Right.
Maybe you're better at deciding than I am. So I just made this thing that will choose for you. And of course, if it doesn't appeal to you, you just sort of spin the barrel, as it were, again until you get excited about it. You're like, man, I'm going to do that right now.
Right.
And you do it. Because decision fatigue is the killer of motivation and action. So showing less options can be really powerful.
Sure. And actually, this seems, in a zombie apocalypse, for instance. So say we have this time machine set up in all of the different hacker spaces, like these little zombie apocalypse bunkers. And there are these, say we want to set up communications, but there are different aspects of communications that we need to set up. And, somebody doesn't know what they want to do on a given day after they've gotten their water and food rations and killed their number of zombies. Then they could go to this GitHub roulette, click and see, what project comes up that still needs to be finished up.
Task dispenser.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like it.
Well, if you're talking about projects in the hackerspace, aka Zombie Bunker, I'm actually working on something called the Maker Network that the president of Pumping Station 1 started with Jordan Bunker. It's a situation or a system, a web app that stores people's profiles and what their skills are, what resources they're good at using, what their projects are.
Cool.
And I've recently been adding some stuff for task tracking into that.
Sure.
And I guess I could make that work with GitHub Roulette, but it's not really GitHub, so it wouldn't match. But the idea of saying, hey, I'm working on a project, and it's my project, but it's at Pumping Station 1. And then if I just sort of flake out and leave it there, then someone else can look at it and be like, man, that box has been sitting there for a while, and it has this URL printed on it on a label. I'm going to look at that. And then it opens up in the Maker Network, and they see it, and they think, man, I can just start working on this. It says open project.
Yeah.
And then they just start doing things, and they have all the documentation of what the project was sitting right there. So it's sort of like a GitHub for physical stuff, except not necessarily like Thingiverse or anything like that.
Well, and I think that's the thing that's most needed actually for a lot of these projects, because someone picks up a project, they're initially interested, and then like you said, they maybe put it aside and don't think about it, and then somebody else might be interested, but they have no idea. It's like the maintenance of these projects, the journey of these projects, as opposed to
it gets lost.
Right.
It's like the Donner Party of projects.
Right.
It sits there, and then someone
and then the warehouse eats it up.
dies, and then someone sees its lifeless corpse, and they pull the components out and build them into other projects.
Right, when that
like
project could have been like freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And it's
cannibalized, as it were.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Donner Pass, yeah.
Which comes up surprisingly often on this show.
I know.
Huh.
It's a little creepy. But it is ZombieTech.
True.
But I don't know if I'd eat zombies.
Probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea. Well, and the reason I say that, like, talk about this maintenance, this project maintenance ideas, because we've talked a few times with groups like Random Hacks of Kindness and Geeks Without Bounds. I don't know if you've heard of those.
I've heard of those, yeah.
Yeah. And so what they do is they start a lot of these neat projects that can help, I don't know, developing countries or like disaster aid relief organizations. And the problem with these is, so they take one weekend, like 2 days maybe, to hack on something or to start a project. But then in terms of maintaining that project, what usually happens is the projects just kind of either fall through the cracks, or, you have to have somebody who actually cares enough about that project to keep it going. And there's no real, I haven't noticed, I guess, a system that they've been able to implement which helps their entire network of geeks to be able to access. Does that make sense?
Because I'm getting the feeling that most of those organizations are not geographically local. They're distributed.
Right.
So they don't have any kind of physical wiki, which is what a hackerspace really is.
Right.
There's a pile of stuff. This thing goes in the same box.
Right.
It doesn't work that way if you're dealing with something where all the people who are working on a project are so spread apart.
Right.
And that's what I really like about GitHub, because it allows you to do asynchronity for code, but it's very much oriented toward code. And having a project or system set up for a wide variety of purposes, like who's working on this? What can I help with? Because sometimes people just want to help someone. Even if it's not necessarily like a starving villager in Africa, they want to help someone. It could be the person in their hackerspace who doesn't know how to solder.
Right.
It could be anyone, because people really like to help people and they like to teach people stuff.
Right.
And the idea that projects and people both need care and feeding is sort of central to this project that we're working on. To say, these things need doing, but these other things need doing too, and we need to balance that. So one of the things I'm really thinking about on the task tracker and the different dashboards that I'm going to build is not just what is new, because I don't know if you've used a source code control system or a task tracker for code. They act different. Like there's a roadmap, like, oh, we're going to try to do this on this release. It's very business oriented, many of them are. But that's what all the task tracking online task trackers, they're all built for. They're built for coders, because coders build them. And then they think, how do I solve this for my code problems? And my opinion of this is, I'm not going to put my code problems on here. I'm going to continue using GitHub, because that's what it's for. This is for projects that have multiple people, that have physical objects, that are part of a community, that are for a certain set of people, that are about helping people, not necessarily building a thing. So all those different tasks need to be served. And instead of saying, hey, what needs to be done today? Most of these things aren't really necessarily things that need doing today. They just need to get done.
Sure.
And you can think about it in terms of, if I'm looking at a specific thing, can I do this right now, is a question that needs answering. Am I allowed to do this? Is the person who put this in okay with me doing it? What is it? What do I need to do this? Like, where are the parts? What tool do I need?
Right.
Do I need to know various skills? Like, having that stuff filtered out, so when you see it, you already know you can do it. Like, you already know that someone said anyone can do this, or it's on your team, or it's for you specifically, and all the tools and stuff you already know and can use. So you just see what you can do. You say, what can I do? And I'm thinking there's 3 different ways it'll be. 1, things that have just been recently updated or added. Things that haven't been touched in a long time. And random. But all the time, show just a few. So you can just say, immediately, what can I do? How can I help?
Sure.
And there's no reason that it will necessarily have to be used by local organizations. It would be widely applicable to the lone wolf hacker, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see how that could be very useful here around the studio. We essentially live in a hackerspace for two. There's so many projects that are, we're working on all the time as we're trying to build our own production studio from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And it can become very overwhelming. We don't really have any good organizational system to keep track of everything that needs done. We just have really good memories.
Addy-style lists.
And the big list, we call it. You go to the big list, you grab something off of it, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this today.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So then let me ask, because you had mentioned balance earlier, and so I like my tangents. But in the hackerspace, do you notice more people working on their own projects or like hackerspace centric projects? Or is it kind of like 50-50?
I would say that it's more about 20% hackerspace specific.
Oh, okay.
Because most of the time, that's going to change a lot in the next couple weeks because we're moving in 2 weeks to right down the street.
Okay.
It's a bigger space. We'll be much more able to do awesome things there because we'll have more room for all tools. Like we have some tools that have just been hiding under a table because there's nowhere to put it.
Sure.
Like we can't use our pottery studio right now because none of the things that we have any space.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to be building out. And one of the most amazing projects of having a hackerspace is to build it. So that's going to be very interesting. And I can see that we're really going to have a shift back to let's build a hackerspace because moving means finding where everything goes, putting it somewhere, building benches, figuring out how it all fits together, like a big Jenga tower or a puzzle that you're putting together.
Yep.
Of course, we don't know what it looks like yet, so it's somewhat difficult.
Yeah. And I mean that's cool. Like, hopefully you guys will document it because
probably
moves are always fun to watch.
Planning on doing a time-lapse shot of the build-out.
Lovely.
That could be a really interesting video.
Lovely.
I don't know who's in charge of that. Of course, that's because
Time Lord.
The Maker Network is not ready yet, so I can't. It's sort of I need to get in the time machine and go back to a year ago and start working on this then, I guess.
And I can think of a couple people who are basically in charge of making sure that everything happens at hackerspaces. And I'm sure all of them that we've talked to would appreciate having this kind of tool.
Yeah.
Well, we're actively working on it. Yep. So it should be ready in the non-completely distant future. I'm not going to promise any deadlines because I've learned that you don't do that.
Not on public interviews anyway.
Not on public interviews
There
anyway.
There you go.
But yeah, one of the things we're looking to do is make it available to other organizations so everyone can use it and everyone can collaborate inter-organization as well. It's not going to be restricted or set up so, only people from Pumping Station 1 can use this.
Sure.
Because there's no reason to do that.
Sure.
And sharing is caring.
Thanks, Eric.
Well, it's true.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually not heard of that many locations, that many hackerspaces that do like arts and crafts. But it sounds like you guys have pottery making materials there. So
we have it. It's not really active.
Right.
You do have a bunch of crafting going on, though, yeah.
So my question was, what's the I guess the percentage. I like talking in percentages. What's the percentage of people doing like electronics versus woodworking versus say crafts and such?
Well, you've come up with a false non-duality here because you're assuming that people don't do everything.
True.
There's people who literally do all of that.
True.
But I would say probably 50% of the people who've done woodworking, 25% have done arts and crafts, 60% have done electronics, 15 to 20% have done programming, maybe 30%. I'm definitely leaving some stuff out because there's so many things that go on. Art and arts and crafts are really overlap, but really it's very interdisciplinary. And that's one of the things I missed out on when I mentioned how great Pumping Station 1 is, because like I had not done electronics in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And what I'd done previously was like, oh, look, I lit up an LED. I learned what a resistor was. I learned Ohm's law. Right. And then I sort of forgot about electronics for a long time.
Right.
And coming back here, I was like, well, I'm a programmer. That's what I put myself in a bucket of I'm a programmer and I do programs.
Right.
And then I showed up and I was like, well, it doesn't look that bad. and and it would be really cool if I could do that, because then I'd be able to get this thing done
Right.
that I want to build. It's just a little step on a staircase, and up at the top is like a pot of gold or something in a metaphorical way. So I may as well try.
Right.
And the great thing is, sometimes you'll just be like, man, I've been thinking about this for an hour. I haven't figured it out. So you're like, hey, anyone remember how to like do a transistor circuit? And like 6 people raise their hands. You're like, oh, all right, I got this. Someone can help me.
Right. I think that's funny because yours is the quasi opposite of mine. I started in electronics and realized that I needed to learn how to program in order to expand my projects, whereas you knew how to program but needed to learn or relearn electronics to expand your projects.
This sort of thing and hackerspaces in general, I think, are partially an offshoot of getting back to that Renaissance way of looking at continuing education. Instead of being specialists, we all have this desire to be really good at a couple of things, but also be able to do other skills to make things happen. You know, we all have little projects that we'd like to see happen, and if they're niche enough, the only person that's going to do it is whoever thought of it.
Yeah, and being a Renaissance person really is it's coming back into vogue, I think. And you know that Heinlein quote, Renaissance, or no, it's a Renaissance man can do this. He can do a ship, blah blah blah, and he says specialization is for insects. And I mean, that's a really, really I'm not sure what the pejorative here is word for that, because really saying someone's an insect because they are really good at one thing, pretty rude. But it's got some validity in it.
I think it's fine to be good at one thing. That's perfectly fine.
As long as you don't limit
I don't
yourself.
think it's okay to be good at one thing at the cost of everything else. You need to make sure that you know how to take care of yourself if anything bad were to happen to the societal net that we all live above.
Like
right?
a zombie. Zombie outbreak. Right.
I can build a windmill, you know.
Can you?
If I've got to, I can build a windmill. I can, you know.
Come on, who can't build a windmill?
Me.
Yes, you can. The motor with a fan on it. Jeez.
Yeah, but getting the motor to
work. I know.
Work in the right direction.
Purposefully simplifying that.
Digging the well is probably the hardest part.
What? A well's involved? Yeah. What is this?
I thought we were making a power generation facility here.
well, you know that's useful, but not so much if you die of thirst before you finish.
If you're in the danger of dying of thirst, you're not going to get a well and a windmill that pumps ready in order to not die of thirst. You're going to die.
So?
It's all about efficiency, right? You know, you're running out to get to the creek to, you know, get the water, bring it back. That takes up a lot of time.
This is not Minecraft. You can't right-click, build a windmill, and then there's a windmill. It takes like days to do this.
Yeah.
You will be dehydrated and delirious before you build a windmill and pump water.
Well, the goal of the windmill isn't necessarily just to get water. It's to get water more efficiently than how you would be stuck doing it otherwise without it.
See, that's
better.
I was just thinking you guys were going to build a windmill because it looked pretty.
Pretty? What's pretty? Oh wait, yeah,
a windmill.
It would be nice. Well, it's not tilted windmills here.
At least die with pretty things around. Maybe I'm being a little stereotypical.
Are you going with the he who dies with the most toys wins? Is that what you're going with?
Sure. I will take that to cover my lack of knowledge of windmills and wells.
But, you know, I was just using it as an example. It's good to know how to do things even if you don't plan on doing them, right? It's good to know how they work.
Well, I mean, I'm banking on a zombie apocalypse. I don't know about you.
You do realize that actually is a really bad bet and you're probably going to lose all your money.
You know, I don't know. We talked to Ennie, and his brother's working on a measles virus and is like messing with its genetics, and I don't know, that just sounds bad.
So hold on, are you saying you know a bioterrorist? Because that's what I'm hearing.
No.
They call it a scientist, a virologist. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Depends on which country you're in, whether or not he's a bad guy, right?
Oh, right. If that was
he's
someone
on
in the Middle
our
East.
team, so we don't call him that. But if you were to ask somebody somewhere else,
well,
they might.
So it's technically supposed to like cure cancer.
Yeah, he's working on cancer targeting.
Measles.
Yeah,
virus cells.
The measles part is what spreads it and what attacks the actual cancer cell.
That's what they say.
But, one little thing goes wrong and, ugh.
Which, a mutation could happen.
We've now created a new strain of measles because that was a good idea.
You've heard about that bit of research that they were trying to repress, right? I know that makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this is legit.
Yes.
Some researcher made
the
some
H1N1
super terrible.
Yep.
It would just kill everyone.
Yep.
And then they wanted to publish its genes, and everyone was like,
no.
Please don't do that. I know you'll get a lot of
accolades and whatnot, but
but
that's not the point.
Not die for your research. It doesn't seem great.
No.
I think they actually got it cleared to be published, though, which is confusing.
Are you kidding me?
No, we're all going to die. That's what the zombie apocalypse comes from. You're right, Eddie.
See? I told you.
Yep.
What did I tell you? Now, my question is, do you think Pumping Station 1 would have the ability to survive a zombie apocalypse?
Well,
and what projects?
Are we talking about slow zombies, fast zombies?
Both. They've decided to mate.
Do they sort of... Oh, no. I don't think anything can survive that, Eddie. But yeah, I think we would have a chance if we all weren't so dependent on takeout food. I think we'd be fine. We need to start stockpiling canned goods. I'm going to bring that up at the board meeting on Tuesday.
Nice. They might think you a little loony, but nice.
Well, you don't know who you're comparing to. We've had a loon or two. I don't think I stand out.
Even if you said to stockpile canned goods?
Well, canned goods are not a inflationary currency. There's that. So I actually am storing some of my wealth in Scotch whiskey because it is not depreciating, unlike all the currencies in the world.
Yeah. I'm doing a bit of that sort of stuff
to have
too.
A great collection of Scotch, but it's a really good excuse.
Yeah, the argument worked very well in justifying having so many vintage musical instruments too. I explained the whole inflation thing to Addie. She's like, you know what? That's kind of smart. You buy the stuff for this amount, and the inflation goes up so fast. A couple of years later, it's worth twice as much. And I'm like, yep.
But you're never going to sell it.
Well, maybe.
That's sort of like how the stock market's going up right now, and the only reason is because we're inflating the dollar to hell and back.
Yep.
That particular topic that you were just talking about with that thing that they tried to stop the publishing happening has actually come up on the show quite a few times because we talked to the sort of people who know about this stuff, immunologists, researchers, scientists, authors of zombie books, that sort of thing. We just talk to people all the time that pay attention to those kind of news stories. So we always hear about all this horrible stuff. It's enough to give you nightmares.
That's awesome.
It is, and you caught me. I have not actually listened to ZombieTech before. I will admit it in front of everyone. I think I'm going to have to start listening now.
You might have to. There are
so many interesting people. The whole point of this show is, zombies, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But it's really a platform for Addie, it's really about zombies. For me, it's more of a platform to put a spotlight on a lot of engineers and scientists and inventors and stuff
and cool projects
that are too busy doing things to be taking the time to try to build some sort of a platform or soapbox or whatever to speak from. You can highlight things like your time machine and get the information out there, get the ideas out there to everybody, and you don't have to go to the trouble of building a freaking media network to get that message out.
Yep.
Yeah, because building a media network seems like it's a lot of work.
Yep.
It's a good amount.
It ends in work for a reason.
Yep. It's a good amount. But okay, so besides canned goods, are there any other projects that you guys have or that you're personally working on, even outside of the hackerspace that you think could help you survive the zombie apocalypse?
Oh, I think so. The software Lidless that I mentioned tangentially that does the video processing could be used for learning the patterns of the zombies, knowing when they're going to be places, knowing when it's safe to go to the watering hole. You could put up the camera and say, "Oh, there's never zombies there at 12 p.m. They're at lunch, eating other people's brains. I'm safe. I can go get some water, set up my windmill, and then I'll never have to go back because I got a pipe."
Right.
It's all about figuring out the patterns of groups. So yeah, that one, I actually sort of thought about that today, just saying, man, if I put this up outside, I could figure out what the public is doing. Public zombies, is there really a difference? They're dangerous. They want your brains. They shuffle around. It's terrible. It's like getting on a public transit. It's very similar. So another one of my projects that could be really helpful there is something I call med coding. One day I saw something come up on Slashdot, I think it was, saying the ICD-10, the International Classification of Diseases, I don't know if I said that right, had been published. And there was a New York, I think it was a Wall Street Journal article about it. It was an interactive story. So you could search it and you could see all the different codes that insurance companies now have to use to put their claims in and stuff.
Right.
And there were a lot of pretty wacky ones in there. Like if you search for turtle, it says struck by turtle, initial encounter.
What?
Or search for, no, I'm serious. If you search for refrigerator, it says asphyxiation by being trapped in a discarded refrigerator. Subsequent. Because this can happen to someone more than once. You don't learn. So using this thing, you could do medical research saying, okay, hold on. Let me check the bot. Does it know whether or not zombies are real? Let it tell me about that. So you might learn something.
You should look up zombies.
You know, I don't have it running right now.
Oh, man.
I have searched for stuff like spacecraft, and they've got codes for that.
What?
Spacecraft accident? Oh, yes. You can go to your doctor and be like, this was a spacecraft accident, doc. You need to note that down. And you may actually have this VX1857A code entered in. And I don't actually know. Those numbers came to mind. They sound like that. They just start with some letters, have some numbers in the middle.
That's wild.
That project is hilarious, actually. You put it in an IRC channel and you use it once, and then people start trying to figure out what it is. And then they use it for like 7 hours straight and don't do anything else all day because it's so fun. But then you learn about all these diseases, which is basically one of the things that humans are most curious about.
Right.
So.
Right. Dude, that's a bit much.
It is a bit much, but
that's a bit much.
The ICD-11 may have zombies in it if your predictions about the future.
We are going to have to search through this. You're going to have to post a link.
I'll pull it up
IRC.
on the tymkrs channel.
Yeah.
We'll include the link in the show notes there.
We'll do.
Let you listeners have some fun too.
Sweet. So, and then let's see. That's a lot of software.
Yeah, I do a fair amount of it.
That's a lot of software. So, any other projects that you think the folks working in the hackerspace?
Oh yeah, I'd say so. For instance, some people are working on tricopters and quadcopters that you can put cameras and they transmit back, so you can do recon with a UAV.
Yep.
Dan Meyer's working on that. Dan Doomey is starting to work on that as well. So there's a lot of projects involving flying machines that have cameras on them.
Sure.
Sort of a eye in the sky type thing.
Sure.
I've seen some really fun videos out of that. We actually had a party last month, and Dan flew it inside. The videos are pretty amazing. I don't know if he's put them up online anywhere, but they're pretty awesome to watch.
As long as they don't run into people's faces.
Well, that's why you put on your Tron helmet and you just go back.
Do you put on your Tron helmet and go about your life?
That wasn't the correct term. A guy, he made a Daft Punk helmet at the space. It was pretty awesome.
Ah, gotcha.
We don't actually have it lying around, but there is a large foam Lego head that you can put on and protect your head.
Awesome. So if you need protection,
put on the Lego head. You'll be okay.
Lego head.
On our video show, Timemaker Television, we took a trip out to Parallax recently, and they design quadcopters there, and they were showing off one of their units. They hooked a GoPro to it, and they were flying it outside in front of a large crowd of people. And there was a special effects Hollywood movie prop builder guy there. What's his name?
Rick Gallinson.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he brought his paintball Gatling gun and had that out there too. So they got the quadcopter flying, and then Rick was trying to shoot it out of the sky with like 1,000 rounds a minute paintball.
Was it 1,000?
gun. It was crazy. I was standing right next to it. Yeah.
Oh, paintball is a lot of fun, but I don't know if it'll kill a zombie.
Well, it it was
They slow
not
them
able to kill
down.
that quadcopter.
Which
Oh,
was
wow.
actually quite surprising. It never actually.
When that
knocked
thing
it down.
landed, I got up close video of it as they were bringing it back in, and that thing was absolutely pummeled with paintballs, but it was still flying fine.
That's impressive.
So we could probably use the quadcopter blades to slice a few zombies up.
Yeah, one of the guys out there was telling me that they saw one crash into a picnic table, and the blade
What?
actually lodged in the top of the picnic table,
What?
like stuck in it like a knife.
That actually, I do have a scar in my hand from a helicopter accident. I was using a
What?
remote control helicopter, and they have that big gear down at the bottom for driving the
Aw.
main rotors. And I learned that you do not allow your hand to touch that wheel while it's
Aw.
spinning very quickly.
Ah.
There was a lot
Ow,
of blood.
ow.
So, yeah, helicopters can
Ow.
hurt you.
It hurts.
So we've talked about using quadcopters against zombies on the show quite a few times. A lot of previous guests actually own various quads,
Quadcopters.
but I don't think you actually need to attach any weaponry to them. You could just
I think you
fly
just
them into
fly
the
'em through.
zombies and do enough
I know.
damage.
Yeah, I think that's totally possible.
All right, we're 10 minutes out, and there's a couple of questions that we like to ask every guest.
Every
and,
guest.
And Eric did not do his homework, so this should be fun.
This should be good. Okay, but wait.
Oh, boy.
I have an interesting comment or observation. We are always constantly learning new things about zombie behavior. And today you mentioned that zombies may like have certain times of day that they come out and feed. You know, say like lunchtime, dinner time, breakfast.
11
Right.
Z's.
11Z's, you know, tea, afternoon tea.
I wrote a song about them not liking the rain.
Right. So the question is, do zombies actually like have preferred times? Because if they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then that's easy enough.
It seems like they like the nighttime in the movies.
Just the nighttime. I know,
Well-
like, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I've always found that if I get paged for a bunch of zombie processes on a server, it's always at an inconvenient time for me. Like 2 a.m. or 4 or dinner or supper. So basically, any time that a zombie would attack,
Is inconvenient.
yeah, it's pretty much zombie processes have a lot in common. Yeah.
Interesting.
I can say that they
Fair
do have
enough.
inconvenient. They whenever it is inconvenient for you is when they're gonna do it. That's just how it is. If you've ever watched a zombie movie, you know that.
Yeah.
You say, "Oh, when we separate and go and look in the dark spaces, that's when
Right.
they strike."
Right.
It's almost as if they still have brains.
When you're going to the bathroom, when you're
Yeah.
making out with some chick that you just met up. Yeah.
And it turns out she's a zombie.
Oh.
That gets bad, yeah.
The little mole starts showing up on her neck. And
Awkward.
Oh, nope. I don't think I want to talk about this anymore.
Okay, all right. So that was my observation for the week. And now we go on to our questions that we ask all our guests. What 3 tools would you bring to a zombie apocalypse bunker?
Oh, I would say, well, that sort of makes me wonder: is it underground? Do I have electricity?
In your case, it sounds like you'll be making a beeline for pumping station 1, right?
Well, I think
Or
I'm going
are
to
you
need
gonna try
to
to
set
get
up
out
a
of
windmill or some solar
Chicago?
panels on our roof, so just in case some shit goes down.
Yeah.
But I think that if I really had to do something like that, I would go with knife, Linux, and let me see, what else do I need? That's actually pretty much the top 2 things that I rely on in my life: a knife and Linux.
So
But-
like Linux on a USB key or
Linux on the, well, obviously some kind of device that runs Linux, and probably some kind of shelter, some kind of like small tent,
A tent.
a tent, Linux, and a knife. I must add.
Okay.
now do you want like a source-based distro so that you can modify it into the future very easily?
I really would have to, because you can't depend on the quote unquote cloud anymore.
Right.
You're dealing with a post-apocalyptic
So-
scenario, so I would go with Gen
And-
2. I think.
But Gen 2 needs the cloud to actually like pull and compile all
Well,
the
I'd
source.
I'd
right?
obviously have a hard drive that had already mirrored the entirety of the
repository
Gen
is
2
already there.
repositories. Yeah.
But
Would
do they
you-
call it a repository with Gen 2? I forget.
You know, I will admit it, since this is not the zombie apocalypse. I'm using Ubuntu lately, so I have not dealt with the internals of Gentoo in a while. I'm still running a system on Gentoo. I'm afraid it may not reboot if I turn it back off.
Ubuntu.
So, yes, Ubuntu.
I just say Linux.
We use Ubuntu server here, so
Do we?
yeah.
Oh, not on a server.
I suppose.
No.
We
Yeah,
use the
Debian.
server edition. of it.
Debian. You have to use Debian.
You gotta talk to Whisker about
We
that.
use
That's
the
over
server
my head.
version.
Oh, I'm not going to tell another dude how to run his Linux. That's rude.
Yeah, I'm not talking like boot disk Ubuntu with KDE or some crap like that. No, this is like command line server edition,
Oh no, he
which
didn't.
is essentially Debian. So
All right. What are these other questions?
Okay.
Well, he only got two. He got
no. He got a tent. His
a
tent.
Yeah.
tent.
In
So is
case
that
the
knife?
bunker doesn't last, because there's going to be something in there that you have to run eventually.
Right, like that chick with the mole on her neck.
Awkward.
Oh, back to that, really? Not the mole.
Moles are just awkward. Okay, all right. So, knife, tent, mole. I mean,
Nope, Linux.
Linux. And okay, well, I guess we can do last question.
Yep.
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah. What book would you bring to the zombie apocalypse?
Oh man, I think there's a book that I don't remember the title of, but I think O'Reilly publishes it or Make Magazine. It's all of the engineering formulas you will ever need in one book.
Really?
I do need, I actually need to find this. I think it's called The Formulas for Absolutely Everything or something like that. I don't remember exactly quite what. But before the zombie apocalypse
Sounds
comes,
like it was
you need
named
to
by an
find that
engineer.
book.
I know.
Oh, I'm sure it was, because it's basically every engineering and building things and fixing things disciplines, core equations and concepts written down.
But with that, okay, wait. Now, core concepts is different but core equations, for instance, like Kalman filters.
I guess. I don't know what a common filter is, but I would if I had this book. I know I'm insulting your heritage. I'm sorry.
Please, I hate Kalman filters. They can die for all I care.
She and Kalman Filters had a
Had a
disagreement
falling out.
at one point early on in her hacking history.
We had a discussion. And it lost. It lost to my stubbornness. But okay, but like, would equations be of use in a zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
Really?
you can kill things with math. I've done it before.
Well, you've killed like processes with math
No.
by like dividing by 0.
Well, that actually does not kill processes if you handle it. But anyway, you're pedanting here. I think that you really can do a lot with math and equations. And people sometimes, the culture in America of not knowing things is cool, it takes, even among smart people, can sort of insidiously say, hey, just, you don't need to know that. That won't help. You can't do anything with that.
Mhm.
But you can actually, sometimes if you just think, I'm just going to trust these equations, it works out.
Okay. All right. So you'll bring the big book of equations and concepts.
I may actually put it on my Linux machine. Don't tell anyone.
So does that mean then that we actually need to let you bring another book?
No,
No.
You're not going to let me get away with that, huh?
not today. Mostly because my answer when they interviewed me was that I wanted like an e-reader that had tons and tons of technical manuals on it.
That's a cheat.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know, right?
but
Smart cheat.
it's not cheating if it works.
Yeah, well, if there's zombies chasing me and I'm going to rebuild society, I really, really kind of want to have it. So,
Yeah. They're not playing fair. Why should you?
exactly.
True. That's a very good point.
All right, Eric. So, what websites, etc., would you like the listeners to know about? I know Pumping Station 1 has a website. You do as well?
Yeah, I'm at cons.truct.org, like construct, because I build things. I also have destruct, and I'm going to do something with obstruct and instruct eventually, but I haven't. I figured I'd go with a domain hack. I publish various blog articles, photos, etc. on there. And I would say that my number one landing page really would be GitHub these days, and my username on there is EA Stein.
Cool. And you are also Toba, Toba,
On
Twitter and in the Toymakers IRC.
Yeah, and it's real easy to get in there and talk to us or Eric if you really want to.
But why would you?
On the IRC?
Why not?
It's on our webpage, tymkrs.com.
Oh,
There's
I
a
meant
web
me.
chat. Yeah. I don't know why you want to talk to Toba. Unless you want to talk about time machines.
Time Lords.
Indeed.
Or linking hackerspaces together.
That's a good reason.
We really do need to get you and Rick Osgood from last week talking about linking up the Pumping Station 1 and the
Eugene Makerspace.
Yeah.
Yep.
Eugene Makerspace.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. You guys can find this show every Thursday at ZombieTech.tv, and you can find Addie and I on Twitter at TYMKRS. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.